The sunset was casting a golden glow across the city skyline as I stepped onto the hotel balcony, the warm summer breeze carrying with it the faint scent of jasmine from the gardens below. The Ocean View Resort was everything the brochure had promised: luxurious, tranquil, and perched perfectly on the coastline where the city met the sea. It was early June, that perfect time when spring had fully surrendered to summer, but before the oppressive heat of July and August had settled in. The weather was perfect, warm enough for short sleeves during the day, but with a gentle cooling in the evening that made sitting outside comfortable and inviting. I hadn't planned on sharing the balcony that evening. In fact, I'd come out here specifically to be alone with my thoughts, to process everything that had happened over the past few days at the conference. As a freelance journalist covering the International Arts Symposium, I'd been running on caffeine and adrenaline, barely taking time to appreciate my surroundings. My name is Emma Mitchell, and organization has always been my strong suit. My life typically runs according to carefully crafted schedules and plans. But something about this trip had thrown me off balance from the moment I arrived. That something, or rather, someone, was Daniel Reyes, the photographer whose work I'd been assigned to profile for my magazine. We'd met 3 days ago at the opening reception, and since then, had spent countless hours together as I interviewed him about his latest collection. Daniel was everything I wasn't: spontaneous, carefree, with an eye that saw beauty in the most unexpected places. Where I planned, he improvised. Where I analyzed, he felt. His work captured raw human emotion in a way that had captivated critics worldwide, and I'd quickly discovered that the man behind the camera was just as captivating as his photographs. I leaned against the railing, letting the sea air fill my lungs, when I heard the sliding glass door open behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know it was him. Something in the air seemed to change whenever Daniel entered a room. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice carrying that slight accent I couldn't quite place but had grown increasingly fond of hearing. I gestured to the space beside me, trying to ignore the flutter in my stomach as he moved to stand next to me. The view from the balcony was breathtaking, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk deepened, the ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon, waves catching the last rays of sunlight. But somehow, with Daniel standing beside me, I found it harder to focus on the scenery. There was an energy between us that had been building since we met, an unspoken connection that went beyond professional courtesy or even friendship. "Beautiful evening," he said, his eyes not on the view but on me. I nodded, suddenly aware of how close we were standing, how the small balcony seemed to shrink the space between us. The conversation flowed easily between us, as it had from the beginning, discussing the day's events, the interesting people we'd met, the thought-provoking presentations we'd attended. But beneath the casual exchange ran an undercurrent of something deeper, something neither of us had acknowledged out loud. Then, without warning, Daniel reached behind him and slid the glass door shut. The simple action seemed to seal us off from the rest of the world, creating a private universe consisting of just the two of us, the night sky, and the distant sound of waves. The click of the door closing felt significant somehow, a deliberate choice to create intimacy. He stepped closer to me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something woodsy with hints of citrus, and see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. My heart began to race as he moved closer. This wasn't part of my plan. Professional relationships were meant to stay professional. That had always been my rule. But there was something about Daniel that made me question every boundary I'd ever set for myself. The way he looked at the world, the way he looked at me, as if truly seeing me, not just the polished professional persona I presented to everyone else. "You know," he said, his voice lower now, more intimate, "I've been wanting to get you alone all day." His honesty was disarming, as always. While I carefully constructed my thoughts before speaking, Daniel simply spoke his truth, unfiltered and genuine. It was both terrifying and refreshing. "We've been together all day," I pointed out, trying to maintain some semblance of composure despite the fact that he was now standing close enough that our arms were nearly touching on the railing. "Surrounded by people," he clarified. "That's different. I wanted to talk to just you, without having to share your attention with anyone else." The tension between us was palpable, electric. It reminded me of the moment before a summer storm breaks, that charged feeling in the air, the anticipation of something powerful about to happen. I found myself holding my breath, caught between the impulse to step away and maintain my professional distance, and the growing desire to step even closer. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, slightly breathless, uncertain. Daniel smiled, that crooked smile that had been distracting me during interviews for days now. "Who said anything about talking?" he teased, and then more seriously. "I wanted to ask you something, actually. Something I couldn't ask with other people around." To ease the tension, he started with light conversation, asking about my hometown, my family, my journey into journalism. I found myself sharing stories I rarely told. About my grandmother who had given me my first camera when I was 8. About the travel magazine I'd created in my college dorm room. About the fears and insecurities that still plagued me despite my professional success. With each revelation, the space between us seemed to grow smaller, the connection deeper. "It's funny," he said after I'd finished telling him about my first disastrous assignment as a rookie journalist. "I've read your work for years. You have this way of making the reader feel like they're right there with you, experiencing everything you describe. But your writing never revealed much about you, the person behind the words. I've learned more about you in these 3 days than in all the articles of yours I've read." His admission surprised me. "You've read my work?" "Before we met." He nodded, looking almost embarrassed. "I may have done some research when I found out you'd be the one interviewing me. I was impressed by your perspective, the way you find the humanity in every story you tell." The conversation shifted then, becoming deeper, more personal. Daniel began sharing his own stories, about growing up in a small coastal town in Spain, about the grandfather who had taught him photography using an ancient film camera, about his struggles with depression during the years when his work went unrecognized. There was something incredibly intimate about standing there in the growing darkness, sharing secrets and vulnerabilities we kept hidden from the rest of the world. As he spoke about his art, his passion was evident in every word, every gesture. "Photography isn't just about capturing what's visible," he explained, his hands moving expressively as they always did when he talked about his work. "It's about revealing what's invisible, the emotions, the connections, the fleeting moments that tell us who we really are." I realized then that this was exactly what was happening between us on that balcony. We were experiencing one of those fleeting moments that reveal something essential about ourselves. The professional boundaries I'd been so careful to maintain were dissolving with every passing minute, replaced by something far more real and raw. "Can I tell you something?" Daniel asked, his voice suddenly serious. When I nodded, he continued, "I almost canceled this interview. 3 times, I nearly called my agent to back out." "Why?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Throughout our interactions, he'd seemed so at ease, so open. "Because I was afraid," he admitted. "Not of the interview itself, but of meeting you. Your reputation precedes you, brilliant, insightful, uncompromising. I was worried my work wouldn't stand up to your scrutiny." I couldn't help but laugh at that. "You were afraid of me? Your exhibition has been praised by every major art critic in the world. Your waiting list for commissions is years long. I was the one terrified of meeting you." Our shared confession of mutual intimidation broke something open between us. The remaining pretense of mere professional interest fell away, leaving us standing there as simply a man and a woman, drawn to each other in ways that had nothing to do with our careers. "From the moment we were introduced," Daniel said, his voice dropping lower, "I haven't been able to think clearly. Do you know how many terrible photos I took yesterday? My assistant thought I was losing my mind. I've had to rewrite my notes every night," I confessed. "I keep getting distracted during our interviews." There was a moment of silence as we both absorbed these admissions. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken feelings and possibilities. In the distance, lightning flashed over the ocean, a summer storm approaching, mirroring the emotional tempest building between us. "I don't usually do this," Daniel said, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. "Mix business with pleasure. But there's something about you, Emma. Something I can't ignore, no matter how hard I try." My name on his lips sent a shiver through me. We'd been on a last-name basis for most of our professional interactions, Ms. Mitchell and Mr. Reyes. The formality a thin shield against the attraction neither of us had acknowledged until now. "I've been fighting it too," I admitted, surprising myself with my honesty. "I keep telling myself it's just professional admiration, but But it's more than that, he finished for me. Just then, the first heavy drops of rain began to fall, the approaching storm finally reaching us. Within seconds, the gentle shower transformed into a downpour. We should have moved inside, taken shelter from the sudden deluge, but neither of us moved. The warm summer rain soaked through our clothes, my hair plastering to my face, his white shirt becoming transparent against his skin. There was something freeing about standing there in the rain, as if it was washing away all the pretenses and barriers we'd constructed. Daniel laughed, tilting his face up to the sky, embracing the moment with the same openness with which he approached everything in life. His joy was contagious, and I found myself laughing too, releasing the tension and uncertainty that had been building inside me. When he looked back at me, the intensity in his eyes took my breath away. Rain dripped from his eyelashes, ran down his face, but he seemed oblivious to it. "You're beautiful," he said simply, directly, in that way he had of cutting through all pretense to the heart of things. Before I could respond, a crack of thunder sounded directly overhead, startlingly loud, making me jump. Daniel reached out instinctively, his hands steadying me by the shoulders. The touch, though innocent, sent electricity through me that had nothing to do with the lightning illuminating the sky around us. We stood there, rain pouring down around us, his hands on my shoulders, my heart racing in my chest. Time seemed to slow, the moment stretching out like honey dripping from a spoon. I was acutely aware of everything. The warmth of his hands through my rain-soaked blouse, the sound of our breathing almost in sync, the way his eyes kept dropping to my lips. "Emma," he said, my name almost a question. He was asking permission, I realized. Despite the intensity of the moment, despite the clear attraction between us, he was giving me the space to step away if I wanted to. But stepping away was the furthest thing from my mind. Instead, I found myself moving closer, eliminating what little distance remained between us. His hands slid from my shoulders to my waist, drawing me against him. I reached up, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw, feeling the slight roughness of evening stubble under my fingertips. The first brush of his lips against mine was gentle, questioning, giving me one last chance to reconsider. But when I responded, wrapping my arms around his neck and pulling him closer, any hesitation vanished. The kiss deepened, becoming something hungry and urgent, years of experience and skill focused entirely on this exchange. The rain continued to fall around us, but I barely noticed, lost in the sensation of his mouth on mine, his hands pulling me closer as if he couldn't bear any space between us. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, the world seemed to have transformed around us. The storm had intensified, lightning illuminating the sky in brilliant flashes, thunder rolling continuously overhead. We were completely soaked, water dripping from our clothes onto the balcony floor, but neither of us cared. "We should probably go inside," Daniel suggested, though he made no move to release me from his embrace. I nodded, suddenly aware of how visible we might be from other balconies or the beach below. The professional part of my brain, the part that worried about reputation and maintaining boundaries, tried to reassert itself, but it was fighting a losing battle against the way I felt in Daniel's arms. We reluctantly separated, and he slid the balcony door open, gesturing for me to enter first. The contrast between the warm, dry hotel room and our rain-soaked state was stark. Water pooled at our feet on the plush carpet, and I suddenly felt self-conscious, aware of how my clothes clung to my body, how my carefully applied makeup had surely washed away in the downpour. Daniel seemed to sense my sudden uncertainty. "I should go," he said, though the reluctance in his voice was clear. "Give you some space to dry off and think." The thought of him leaving, of breaking this connection we'd established, sent a pang through me. "Or you could stay," I heard myself say. "We could order room service, talk more. I'm not ready for this evening to end." The smile that spread across his face was worth any professional complication that might arise from this situation. "I'd like that," he said simply. As we changed into the hotel's plush robes and hung our wet clothes to dry, as we ordered a late dinner and opened a bottle of wine, as we continued our conversation late into the night, I realized something fundamental had shifted between us. What had started as a professional assignment had become something I'd never expected but couldn't bring myself to regret. The kiss on the balcony marked a turning point, not just in our relationship, but in how I viewed myself. For years, I defined myself primarily through my work, keeping personal connections secondary, safe, controlled. But Daniel, with his artist's eye that saw beyond surfaces, with his passion for capturing authentic moments, had somehow seen past all my carefully constructed barriers to the woman underneath. "What happens after tomorrow?" I asked as we sat cross-legged on the bed, empty plates pushed aside, wine glasses in hand. Tomorrow was the final day of the conference, my last scheduled interview with him, my flight home booked for the following morning. Daniel reached out, his fingers intertwining with mine. "That depends on what you want to happen," he said. "I have an exhibition opening in New York next month. After that, I was planning to take some time off, maybe do some personal projects rather than commissioned work." "I'm based in Boston," I said, my mind already calculating the distance, the possibilities. "That's not far from New York." "No," he agreed, a slow smile spreading across his face. "It's not far at all." We talked until the storm passed, and the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky. We discussed possibilities and practicalities, fears and hopes. Nothing was decided definitively. It was too soon, too new for concrete plans. But as I drifted to sleep with Daniel's arms around me, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. The balcony moment, him sliding the door shut, stepping close, the rain, the kiss, had been the catalyst, but what followed was the true revelation. In opening myself to this unexpected connection, I discovered parts of myself I'd forgotten or never fully acknowledged. My capacity for spontaneity, for joy, for seeing beauty in unplanned moments. All qualities I admired in Daniel's photography, but had somehow lost in my own life. When I woke a few hours later, sunlight streaming through the partially open curtains, Daniel was standing on the now-dry balcony, camera in hand, capturing the morning light on the ocean. Watching him work, completely absorbed in his art, I felt a certainty settle over me. Whatever complications might arise from this unexpected turn of events, whatever adjustments we might need to make to our independent lives, the connection we discovered was worth exploring. I joined him on the balcony, the scene of last night's transformation. He turned and smiled at me, that genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made my heart skip. "Good morning," he said, lowering his camera to pull me into an embrace. As we stood there, watching the new day unfold before us, I realized that sometimes the most meaningful journeys begin with the smallest steps: a shared balcony, a closed door, a step closer. In my years as a journalist, I'd witnessed countless significant moments, but none had felt as profound as this quiet morning, standing in the arms of a man who had unexpectedly changed my perspective on everything. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked, pressing a kiss to my temple. "That I came here to tell your story," I replied. "But somehow, you've helped me rediscover mine." He laughed softly, the sound rumbling through his chest against my ear. "Maybe that's what we do for each other, help reveal the stories we can't see in ourselves." As a writer, I'd always believed in the power of words to capture experience, to convey meaning. But standing there on that hotel balcony for the second time, I understood that some moments transcend language, existing in the realm of pure feeling. The story of Daniel and me had begun with a professional assignment, transformed during a rainstorm on a shared balcony, and now stretched before us like the ocean on the horizon, vast, unknown, and full of possibility. Total _char_count, 18,872.